I asked the question because in the letter, the leaked document, the Minister of State was quoted as saying this matter has gone on for a year or thereabout. These issues of insubordination and abuse of processes have gone on for almost a year or thereabout. So that's why I asked, do you think it's personal? Because he also mentioned in that letter, or it was mentioned in the letter, that he might be accused of being anti a certain region, corrupt, and all of that.
Professionally, I don't want to dabble into ethnicity and any of that. I quarrel seriously, and I condemn in its entirety the fact that the sitting president doubles as the Minister for Petroleum. That has helped this rot a great deal, and the right things need to be done.
But even though he has not per se been functioning in that office, I mean, the Minister of State has been the one functioning, so he's been the one, he's the face of the Petroleum Ministry Resources, so he's the one that has been in the functioning capacity. So should that be a problem? Again,
that's another aberration. In that report, Kachiku said that he is the chairman of the board, but he's not the Minister of Petroleum. The minister is supposed to be the chairman of the board. And if you read closely between the lines, you will see the insinuation that the tenders board of the NNPC got some approvals from the president. So if, you see, what my real interest is here is to invite the organized civil society, at least those of them that are concerned with good governance, to drag the tenders board of the NNPC, the governing board of the NNPC, to a court to let Nigerians know all that is happening behind the curtains. But my major interest and focus will be, is it true that at any time the president gave approval tacitly to these procurements, direct approval to the tenders board of the NNPC? If that is true, for me, that's an impeachable offense. If you look at the case in Brazil, the case in South Korea, for which those leaders have been shown the door, they are not as grievous as this. So I would want this nation, organized civil society, to properly unravel what happened between the tenders board of the NNPC and Mr. President.
Okay, we'll go to break. We'll come back and look at some more world best practices in terms of corporate governance and how this should have gone. Join us again. Welcome back. Do you expect the president to speak up on this matter?
Much more than that. Speak up he should, and very loudly too, because Nigerians are very worried, extremely worried. And they want to know his role in all of this. One recurring question would be, did they give any kind of approval to the tenders board of the NNPC? That's a question that is begging for an answer. And if that question is in the affirmative, then of course, Mr. President, the legislature will have to do the needful, because for me, what I know about democracy, that is an impeachable offense.
But what process is likely going to get them to say this? Because if the Senate is going to investigate this matter and they're going to invite people to appear, in what capacity will they invite the president?
Well, they are already thinking of constituting a panel of inquiry.
Yeah.
And I think if it becomes very necessary to invite the president because there are questions that he needs to answer, so be it. Let me tell you, this is not about personalities. The legislature is the essence of democracy. That's the very essence of democracy. If you see what is playing out in the US that we copied after, you know, if it becomes absolutely necessary to invite President Buhari to answer questions on this, so be it. And he's bound to comply.
The that side of it is, do you think the board itself, the NNPC board, could have met to handle this issue? Or is it that the composition of the board has made it impossible for them to meet to settle this?
The world best practice, see, corruption is the slightest deviation from an established norm with an ulterior motive. That established norm says that there has to be synergy between management and the board to allow this kind of heavy-duty procurements, to occur. Even that I quarrel with, because I don't see why the NNPC or the CBN or the DPR should be allowed to do procurement outside the law of procurement in the land, which is the BPP. That's very, very wrong. The BPP is the only known law in this country, and there is a process to be followed. There are thresholds of approvals, after which you must resort to the Federal Executive Council. All of this is just like Nigeria is being run like a banana republic or something, or a personal property. See, I'm so miffed. This is the portfolio that lays over 70–80% of the nation's resources and is kept in the hand of 2 or 3 people somewhere. I think that organized civil society needs to wake up. We need to wake up and be a serious people. Because for me, looking at what is happening right now, we are not a serious people at all.
Looking at the date on that letter, it was 30th of August. Were you surprised that, who knows, up until now, we don't know what was done about it? Does that suggest that if it wasn't leaked, we don't know the circumstances under which it was leaked anyway, if it wasn't, we may not have even heard of this?
Certainly. Look at the letter that came from the governor of Kaduna State. You see, I am getting really, really ashamed. Ashamed. You know why I keep using this phrase? I do anti-corruption. I train, at least in a month, over 60, 70 people from across the MDAs. All we talk about is the issues of compliance and anti-corruption. And my idol has been President Buhari. Even the magu that people try to ridicule, for me, I think he's a very upright person, even though processes may not be right. But to see this kind of thing happening in the heart of this administration brings me a lot of shame. It's like I'm being personally ridiculed. Because anti-corruption is a process. And what is happening right now in this administration is on the negative side of anti-corruption.
Yeah, but shouldn't you be patient and wait to hear what the president has got to say? Because what if he's not aware of some of these things going on?
Tacitly, you are saying that he's not in charge of the administration of the country. Is that what you're implying?
We don't know until we hear him.
You may not be too wrong, because looking at the letter that came from the governor of Kaduna State, we were told that most of the ministers are compelled to report to the chief of staff, which for me again is another, aberration that should not be happening. So if he's not aware of issues as important as this, I don't know what to say.
Because remember, the minister is trying to see the president in that memo. He's not been able to do that. So if you look at that premise, can we then conclude anything? Because if he hasn't been able to see him to communicate some of these things, what if the president was told that things were going on right?
All ministers are important in the cabinet, but 2 very prominent and important ministers will be that in charge of budget and that in charge of petroleum. Those, for me, are the kind of people who could walk straight into the bedroom of Mr. President and discuss issues that are very, very pertinent to the survival of the country. So why would the Minister of State for Petroleum be trying to see his principal for that length of time and not being able to see the principal? Why would that happen? There's there are several questions begging for answers here.
And we're hoping that in days ahead, some of those answers will unfold. But we appreciate your coming on today. Mr. Ivie Richards is the Executive Director of Corruption Observatory, and we'll get across to you subsequently as this progresses.